Hello, good morning, good afternoon to all of you out there in digital commerce, e-commerce marketplace, Zoom, Demio land. I am very pleased to welcome all of you to our marketplace organizational chat. I want to quickly introduce Andy over here. Wave, Andy. Hi. Andy's going to kind of walk through what he does in his wide world of recruitment and support in a couple of seconds, but just wanted to quickly do some housekeeping. So one, this is going to be about half an hour, 45 minutes long. All of you will get a link to the recording and the slides and the ebook for all of this. There is a public chat, so feel free to chat throughout there. We'll take questions intermittently as well as at the end. Without further ado, I'm Steve, in case you didn't know who I am. I'm Steve Mader. I run advisory at POTOO, and for a significant amount of time, I've been in many of your shoes, whether that is, we've got a couple market research folks on the line, we've got a couple brands on the line, and I know how important it is to be able to have little nuggets of insight around not necessarily what your direct competition is doing, but what's happening out there in the world. What is happening out there from companies that are in my industry, outside of my industry, other markets, what are leading companies doing, and what are lagging companies doing, so that I can better bench strength or benchmark where my strengths are as a brand, but also help build the business case internally. If I need to start asking for resources, it's very easy to say, here's what other companies are doing. Let's go off and fight for resources. So over the past, all 2020, so the past, say, 15 months or so, there's been a significant amount of questions that have come at POTOO around what are other companies doing around resourcing for marketplace and digital platforms like an Instacart or an Uber. What type of profiles are people hiring for? Where are they coming from? Can I run it out of my Amazon team, or should it be run separately because it is slightly different from an operational cadence than the core Amazon team? And one of the reasons why that comes to POTOO quite often is that we're right in the middle of where a lot of this is happening. So if you're not familiar with POTOO, POTOO is a marketplace analytics company where they track, identify everything that happens on 3P marketplaces, whether it's eBay, Mercado Libre, Amazon, obviously Facebook Marketplace, anything where your brand can be represented in a rogue way and be able to take action on this. We communicate with unauthorized sellers and help coach them perhaps to becoming compliant with your seller policies. And then if it is in fact a rogue, counterfeit, or a nefarious listing, we action that on your behalf. And I'm very, very pleased that we were able to partner with Andy from Vertical Advantage on some of the insights that you're going to see today.
Yes, likewise. Thanks, Steve. And yeah, for those who don't know me, I'm Andy from Vertical Advantage. I'm a director there and run our e-commerce team. And yeah, I guess the reason we're involved with this is marketplace has become for us something that was a very small part of our business a couple of years ago into the kind of the predominant part in the last 12 months. So in terms of kind of volumes of hiring that we did in 2019, 5% of the roles we filled had some kind of marketplace focus. And that was up to 29% in 2020, and it's kind of probably slightly above that this year. So it's been a huge shift that we've seen. You can see there the areas that we cover, and actually in all of those areas, the need for marketplace knowledge has still been present, maybe D2C less so, but yeah, whether that's big CPG brands, marketplaces themselves, the consultancies have grown hugely. FBA aggregators is a new space where there's a whole new kind of demand for talent that didn't exist 12 months ago. So yeah, some of the kind of areas that we cover, and yeah, delighted to be here to talk about some pretty interesting stuff that we've uncovered.
Fantastic, and we're very happy to have you. And just something just immediately jumps out, right? And we talk a lot about talent and kind of capabilities and how brands in particular are under pressure to find the right people in the right places. If you think about everything that your team does right there on a page, you have CPG brands, you got marketplaces, retailers, you have D2C brands, consulting, big agencies, small agencies. These are all essentially trying to hire the same person to some degree, maybe slightly different skill sets, different seniority levels, some commercial, but more marketing driven. But reality is, it's the same pool of people. And there's only so many folks that are in that specific kind of talent pool. So it's going to be a very interesting rest of the year as people start to solidify where their structures are going to go.
Yeah, exactly that. And yeah, we'll come on to talk about it a bit in some of the other slides in terms of kind of getting into a bit more detail about how you approach that and like where are you going to find the skills that you need and what you should be doing to try and prepare yourself for that. Because yeah, even now it's harder than it was 6 months ago, right? And month by month, that's gonna continue to be the case.
Great. So just a little bit of context. I mean, I can't help myself to do a little bit of storytelling before I jump into slides. So one of the things that I think has really kind of spurred the mentality for many brands is a bit of, I don't want to say complacency because that's not the right word, but feeling in a very happy place. And all of a sudden 2020 pops up and it has a massive shock to the system. And what we've seen is a very standard kind of linear trajectory, guardrails, or roadmap to where many CPG companies in particular have been growing. So they kind of have started off with, you have your little cluster of e-commerce champions. You've got one or two people who may be calling on Amazon, who then become kind of the voice internally of change. You may have someone in trade marketing who's like, oh my gosh, we have to do all of these PDPs. We don't have the skill set or capabilities to be able to do that. Oh my gosh, we need to invest in here. So you have these champions that eventually coalesces into a global team, a global center of excellence, a digital commerce center of excellence, and that may be surrounded by, the Amazon team in a lead market like the US becomes the global Amazon or a global e-commerce capability development team, or likewise in China. And where many leading companies are now was all around the scaling phase of this is becoming normal. Amazon is no longer kept outside. It is now brought into the fold, into the same conversations as Tesco or Ocado or Carrefour or Walmart. You start to think a little bit less on how do I chase top line growth at the expense of everything, and actually start to think about profitability. And it becomes just embedded in the normal way that companies go to market. And all of a sudden, they shut off your POs, your growth engine, in 2020, in April or so. All of a sudden they shut off all the POs. You can no longer ship items there. And that becomes really, really difficult to manage because if you are just now at the point where you're starting to think about profitable, scalable growth on 25% growth year on year, and all of that goes away, you are scrambling to figure out not only how do I grow, but how do I actually build the route to market that allows me to actually get products to people who may need it. And that's been a massive, massive wake-up call, which is where we started to see not only the huge amount of we need digital talent, e-commerce talent, but it's, oh my goodness, how do I actually work with a 3P? Everything's been 1P with Amazon. What is this hybrid thing? I thought we weren't allowed to do that anymore. Or eBay is only for used items. I had no idea I could sell directly there anymore. So some of the common challenges that we saw were things around, I need to grow, I need to keep the lights on, but where all the growth is coming from is too complex for my business. It's very unprofitable. What do I do? Or I have too many SKUs. And as we all saw, in order to simplify the supply chain distribution, many retailers greatly limited the number of SKUs that they were taking to only like 10 or 15% of your portfolio. And when they wanted bigger orders of that, which tends to break many supply chains. And all of a sudden, not only are you over skewed in your core channels, but you don't have the right mix of SKUs in where the growth channels are going to come from, like marketplaces or fast fulfillment. You don't have the partnerships to grow. You don't have the right 3PLs. You don't have the right, I'll say, operating model that allows for you to determine if there's no buyer, how does that work in my channel segmentation? How do marketplaces, where does eBay sit in my channel team? Is it a pure play? Is it Amazon? How does that work if I can't actually sell them anything? And then how do I grow into new markets? How do I do an international 3PL to actually help me scale? And then, of course, as Andy will walk us through, is all around talent. How do I find the right people at the right seniority levels? And hopefully they don't get poached after 6 months, which is what we see a lot of poaching constantly, a 6-month turn over Q4 and Q1 this year. So that's kind of the background and the context to show you why we've kind of have commissioned some of these questions. So we've got 15 questions as part of our benchmarking. We'll walk through these now. The idea behind this is, as someone who has been, running an e-commerce center of excellence at a big brand, the importance of having little nuggets of insights is incredibly important, like I was saying before. So these individual questions are built in such a way that allows for you, in your moment of time, in your moment of need, whether that is a business plan or an internal strategy meeting, to be able to pick these little slides out and drop them into your presentation as background if you need it. Okay, so we're gonna start with strategy and move on from there. So we asked 132 global brands, all of these different questions. And this is the same structure for all of these different slides. It's a little bit consultanty, as Andy will tease me about, but I can't help myself. It is what it is. So question number one was around, does your company or brand actually have a defined strategy for 3P marketplaces? And this one, I will fully admit, surprised me. 57%, so over half of the brands surveyed actually do have not only a marketplace strategy, but it's actually been communicated to stakeholders across the business. Now, whether or not that communication has been understood is a separate question we could explore next year.
I was going to say,
how that update was actually done.
This has been filled in by people who've been doing the communicating, not necessarily the people who've been having to listen, but
yeah, absolutely. This is, I fully communicated it. And if you have not understood it, it's not my problem. Yeah. I take your point validly, Andy, but it's interesting. This is the perspective that they feel like, oh yeah, we got it sorted. And I think the reality may be slightly different, especially once you start thinking about local markets, who may or may not be fully bought into the vision of where, say, global is trying to take us. What's also interesting is the next one up is not like an evolution, but it's, we don't have one yet, and they're just fully in on 1P or direct. They haven't really started to explore 3P yet at the moment. So I think there's still some opportunity here to get that up a little bit more, but also something to think about is, how do I actually start to communicate that across different levels of the business rather than just a global strategy. Question number two around strategy was, how would you actually rate your company's progress towards a coherent marketplace or 3P strategy? So we've broken this out into 4 key buckets. So number one is around exploring of, we will invest, but we're still trying to explore the size of prize. And POTOO does a lot of this type of work, which is diagnostics of, we're in Amazon in France, help us better understand other marketplaces like Cdiscount in France to see if it's worth it to expand into those marketplaces. There's also quite a lot, almost half are in the accelerating phase, which is they have commitment from senior leadership, obviously, to grow. Growth is very, very important. And now they're starting to build the channel strategy. There's been a lot. I've heard this term used more in 2020 than I in my entire digital commerce career, which is we need to integrate this into our channel strategy first, which is amazing to hear that we're going to start thinking about a dedicated marketplace channel strategy, which encompasses everything from assortment to team structure to P&L to budget flows to everything. This is great. Not very many yet are in the scaling phase, which is I already have my international 3PLs determined. I already have my category team fully on board with the right assortment at the right price points at the right moment in time. And I've got my partners, my platforms identified, and we're going 1,000,000 miles an hour. I would assume when we run this again in 2021, this number will increase a bit because so much of 2020 was scrambling to build the strategy. And now in 2021, it's all right, let's go and execute. Go, 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 go. Now, the leading question, the leading bucket is very interesting. So very, very few, only 1 or 2 folks, based on our sample size, consider themselves here. And based on who I know filled it out, absolutely. And it's very much around, these are the leaders. These are the ones that an Amazon or an eBay will fully tailor their entire, stack towards. These are folks like Anchor. These are folks that are increasingly becoming the leaders in how the 3P international side of things work. And only 10% are not taking anything into account. Only 10% are fully committed to just the 1P side of things. So you've got your channel strategy, you've got commitment from leadership, you're going a million miles an hour. What are some of the KPIs? What are some of the objectives you're trying to hit? And what we've seen, no surprise, is growth. Growth is the number one reason why folks are investing into a marketplace strategy. We need to find the growth from somewhere. This is available to us. This is where the retailers are moving to. Shoppers have a decent uptake of it. Let's go. And then the question becomes, well, how do I optimize my existing assortment and distribution to be profitable in this environment? Brand protection is near and dear to our heart, and we're very happy to see that it's number 2 on the list. 56% of folks say this is an objective as part of the marketplace strategy. It's not just growth, go, but let's make sure it's managed, sustainable, solid commercial policy growth first. Next down is around international expansion. And I'm delighted to see every conversation I'm having is reflective of this around we have to grow internationally, and having a robust 3P strategy allows for us to grow in a relatively capital light, cash light, quick way internationally. If I can partner with a strong 3P or logistics partner to be able to scale internationally and get the right economics to do that, it's very easy to drop in to 4 or 5 different markets in a year without having to put people on the ground. Whether or not that's a sustainable question, it was an interesting question because, obviously you want local market nuances eventually, but it allows you to capture some of that latent demand which exists in those markets and go very, very aggressively and very, very quickly. And I love we did a lot of interviews as well off the back of this. And I love this kind of quote from someone who said, it doesn't really matter what channel you're thinking about. All that matters is if you think shopper experience first, regardless of 1P, 3P, D2C, you'll find the right levers to pull for growth. And I think that's a really good take to have on this. As long as you're thinking shopper first, the route to market will kind of solve itself first, as long as you're not beholden to internal constraints around operating model and things like that. Okay. So you've got your objectives. What are the immediate priorities for the next 12 months, right? So this was rated between essentially 1, not important, 10, very important. And that's kind of, most of these companies have a longer term channel strategy, not just a 12-month channel strategy. So number 1, most important, very, very important, incremental growth opportunities. You're already starting to pick up a nuanced thread throughout all of this, which is marketplaces, I'll say in the before times, very much thought of as defensive, tactical defense, stop people randomly listing on my ASINs, on my SKUs, stop counterfeits. And that's still incredibly important, but it's increasingly now, this is growth. It's manageable growth. It's growth that I can control. I own more of the kind of route to market, and the growth allows me to scale a little bit easier. So that's number 1, very important. Number 2, very important on the bottom is hiring the right talent. So we have to get in the talent now, immediately, which I'm sure is no surprise to Andy, music to his ears. Talent is incredibly important. And then expanding to new markets. So it's growth, people, and international expansion is the top 3 most important things for the next 8 to 12 months or so. After we think about that, it's okay. How do we then think about ensuring that once we identify where we want to go and how we're going to get there, that it's done in a sustainable, managed way through ensuring counterfeit products are actively managed and removed. And something which I believe in my heart is is not high enough on people's agenda. But as someone who has lived both in North America as well as in Europe for many, many years now, the impact of unauthorized cross-border sales when you start thinking about international expansion cannot be understated. It kills margin. It kills regional margin. It kills regional profitability. It's incredibly important to put that higher on your list to be able to actually reduce some of that cross-border challenge where you legally are allowed to do so. Cool. Next question around strategy. Which marketplaces and platforms does your business consider strategic partners? So you got your channel strategy. You're thinking about different partners. You're thinking about different assortments. Now you need to start thinking about, because every company is going to have a customer segmentation strategy. Which ones do you want to invest in? It's the win with the winners. Which ones do you want to lead and grow with and overinvest in? 100% said Amazon. No surprises probably there. Maybe it's reflective of our user base, our respondent base, of the vast majority being from Europe and North America, where Amazon dominates the conversation and is the largest one that's going to actually move the needle in terms of corporate leadership investment strategy. But no surprises there. Number two,
begrudgingly based on the respondent comment down there.
Yeah, it's a great watch out of, well, yes, it is a strategic partner. It may not be your best friend or your favorite partner. It's interesting once you start having chats with people of who's your most important partner, and then which one do you like the most. And that gets into really fun conversations. I always use this example of, for the vast majority of European brands that I've spoken to, they, for example, will have, say, the Netherlands as a sustain or a profit market in their segmentation strategy, because it's not necessarily a growth market for them anymore. Totally fine. But then you've got a company like Bol.com, which is very high capabilities. Growth is outpacing the market. Extremely collaborative for many categories, especially if you play with them in the right way. So you have a retailer there where if you overinvest in, you can get larger than your fair share. So it's an interesting balance between how do you do that from a regional kind of coordination point of view when you have a really important strategic customer in a relatively unstrategic market. And that's a fun conundrum for anyone in commercial excellence or business development to play with, especially when you start talking to your Dutch team. But I completely agree with this respondent down here. It's Amazon, for the enormity of how it impacts your business. It's not the most collaborative player. And it's kind of by design. They don't want to talk to you. They want you to just kind of put your money into their machine, and then it spits out sales, which is great for them and potentially for you. But they're not very collaborative, not very strategic. And I humbly am of the opinion that all of the amazing investments that they're doing around counterfeits and kind of rogue reduction is very much for their own benefit, not necessarily for their strategic brands. Interesting. eBay's number 2 here, or at 60%. Walmart, very high on this list from strategic partners. It's Walmart. You're going to have that as a strategic partner. What's interesting, though, is despite the fact that the majority of our respondents are North America or European based, Lazada, Mercado Libre, and Shopee, I think, is a missed opportunity. It needs to be higher on this list. And obviously, it's through the lens of strategic partners, and everyone cannot be a strategic partner. But the fact is, Lazada, now, of course, owned by Alibaba, is absolutely enormous in Southeast Asia. Many of you are going to have Singaporean e-commerce, digital commerce hubs. It makes the most amount of sense to have Lazada higher up on that list. Mercado Libre is a huge dominant player in Latin America. Completely missed opportunity to better explore what that means. And Andy, you were saying that there's some interesting movements with Mercado Libre at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, for the first time recently, we've seen someone from Mercado Libre being hired in the UK for a marketplace role, which was actually not working on Mercado Libre. It was an Amazon-focused role, but yeah, it's my first experience of that, and I'm sure, I would agree with you certainly that 12% will be massively higher if we did this in a year's time. But also, yeah, if as a talent source, it's interesting that people are starting to look at that already.
Absolutely, and I think the need for talent. I know Andy, you're going to talk about this in a little bit, but you can't just go after, they've got Amazon on their CV. I need them. There's so many amazing retailers out there and people who have not only worked with Amazon, but have been able to outcompete Amazon in their home markets. I think it's an untapped opportunity. Right, assortment. Question number 6. How is your business actually creating a dedicated marketplace assortment? So as we know, of course, it's a little bit of nuance in terms of what is in general assortment versus what is potentially profitable for the 3P side of things. And what we're seeing is people that are creating assortments for marketplaces are being very opportunistic about it. They're looking at what is currently selling, what's, say, a bundle pack or a bulk pack that may not be in general catalog, but maybe an entrepreneurial 3P has shrink wrapped together toothpaste and mouthwash and a toothbrush, created a regimen solution beauty pack, selling it for 15 euros, and fantastic. And the brand may not have the ability to actually do that in terms of their own listing. They may not have the supply chain capabilities to do it, but the 3PL does. So it's an interesting opportunity to not only identify, what are unlisted rogue ASINs or rogue listings, but potentially even partner with those 3PLs rather than just try to delist them. Only 14% have actually integrated marketplace economics into their category product strategy. So an untapped opportunity there. It'd be interesting to see how these two specific items evolve over the next 12 months or so to see if we move away from opportunistic into more integrated side of things into the go-to-market model. Number 7, around distribution. We were asking folks, which of the following different distribution models are you exploring over the next 12 months? And respondents could select more than one option. So over half were exploring some sort of hybrid solution where they were looking at splitting 1P, whether that is, on Amazon, crapped out ASINs and moving them into 3P, or creating dedicated 3P exclusive SKUs that were able to kind of accelerate that way. Looking at hybrid, 45% were both looking at creating an authorized 3P strategy that sits alongside or within their existing commercial strategy. We've been hearing this a lot at the moment around, I need to expand my authorized distribution strategy and authorized dealer network to be more e-commerce marketplace inclusive. And also at that same level is around international expansion to 3PLs. Very, I'll say, cost effective if you can make the economics work and build a business case and get supply chain on board. It ends up working fairly well. And only 14% are looking at D2C. It's relatively easy to say, oh yes, strategic retailers or strategic brands that are leading the conversation will be using their D2C fulfillment network to be able to, sell through eBay and Amazon. But the cost implications of that and complexity implications are enormous. So it's only 14% or so of respondents are exploring looking at using their D2C networks to be able to do that. So I would expect this to creep up a bit as more brands use D2C as one of the arrows in their quiver to grow, because as we know, we want people to take more control over their distribution, get more data. So we're expecting more D2C capabilities to be built over the next 12 months. But this is one to watch. The immediate growth is going to be coming from using 3PLs rather than using D2C. And then the question number 8 around fast fulfillment, and move into a couple of questions, is how are you actually thinking about using actual fast fulfillment platforms like Instacart or Postmates, Deliveroo or Uber? Deliveroo was recently IPO'd in the UK, which subsequently tanked the share price when people realized that, oh my gosh, during a pandemic where no one can go anywhere, you're unprofitable. How does that even work? What happens if people can go? can actually go to the stores and no longer are captive to you. Are you going to make profit then? Question marks, question marks. So interesting business model there. But what we're seeing is it's still very new, still very nascent, still very exploratory for many folks. And I think this is very indicative from this interview question that we had, where someone said, we have an Instacart conversation, and then we have a separate Walmart merchant conversation. It feels like it's a bit of a tick box exercise and something that's actually integrated. And I've not heard yet. Please, if you have it in the comments, leave it in the comments or send us a note later. It still seems like everything's very separate. They want to know that you're talking to each other, fine. But in terms of an integrated joint business plan between the new online, offline, omni-channel merchant team in Bentonville and Instacart, does not seem like it's quite there yet with Walmart in particular. Still new, still getting there, but still very new. So 30% almost not leveraging the platforms at all. Most are now exploring, accelerating a little bit with retail partners. Very, very few, under 10%, are actively ingesting campaign data with Instacart. So an untapped opportunity there if you are in a category where you are dominating offline and online, you may be able to quickly ramp up on Instacart as they're looking for more and more campaign partners. Great. Okay, we've got a quick poll before we go into the next organizational question. All right, nope, sorry. It's my mistake. We're going to go through 2 questions first.
Not yet.
And then we're going to do the poll. I got ahead of myself.
All right, the poll's up.
The poll's up. I'm going to do the poll. Sorry. I'm messing everything up. Questions for our poll. Have you actually seen digital talent costs rise in the last 6 months? It's amazing that, months ago when we were building out a lot of these different questions, we all kind of knew that digital commerce talent is going to be slightly more expensive. We didn't really realize the extent of it when you close this out, which is why we're going to include these results in the comments out to everybody. Well, I think that's a fairly nearly unanimous question or answer. Yes, more expensive, talent costs have increased. Andy, is that something that you're seeing? I'm guessing.
Yes. Yeah, it definitely is. I think I'll come on to talk about it on some of the other, or maybe now, but probably some of the other slides are relevant to it as well. And it's interesting, there are people in there who are saying that their talent costs haven't increased. I think there's this kind of Moneyball like element to the market at the minute, in that if you're really smart about looking for using the kind of data around what do we really need from a skill set perspective to grow and focus on hiring for that, there's definitely opportunity to hire, smarter than a lot of other people in the market are hiring. So I think there is an opportunity to hire at, maybe the same kind of the costs that you're used to. But the kind of majority of certainly the talent, the demand has gone up. So naturally the salaries have gone up. Even stuff like Amazon have recognized in the past, probably a bit more than the last 12 months, but recognized the value of the people on the marketplace side. And there was a bigger discrepancy between vendor and partner managers 2 or 3 years ago than there is now. They're paying those people a lot more. So if you're trying to attract them out, it costs you a lot more. So, and then, the kind of proliferation of other people looking for talent in this space who just weren't. 12 months ago or so. So yeah, definitely the case. I think Steve, we might have lost Steve for a bit, but I'll crack on with this next bit. So the stuff around, do you feel your business is equipped with knowledge to capture the opportunity on marketplaces or digital platforms? It's obviously a pretty widespread of distribution here. I guess like 51% of people scored 5 or less. And I'd say if you score 5 or less, you're probably not too confident that you do have that kind of knowledge within the business. I don't know if all of that is just a result of marketplace kind of prioritization becoming more of a thing. I think if you asked anyone if they had that, whether it's marketplaces or not, if it's just e-commerce and digital broadly speaking, they would probably say no. So I think some of that is just the wider market dynamics, right? The market's grown and everyone's trying to catch up with that. And that means that you probably have skill sets or don't have skill sets in certain areas. But some of that is undoubtedly 3P. And just, I think, for businesses who, if we take Amazon as an example, specifically, you know, who are very used to operating in a retailer style relationship, having the level of ownership that you require from a marketplace perspective and what that means from the skill sets you need, I think is a bit of that's the kind of, not a shock to the system, but that's the stuff where people feel like they really lack. This one feels like it was just put in here to make me feel, you know, confident about the next 12 months. But no surprise here that that most people are going to need someone and need people specifically with marketplace experience. It's interesting here that the comment around Amazon team, you know, undoubtedly everyone has been in hyper execution mode and, you know, looking for just kind of bodies to keep up with the demand in the last 12 months, and saying that we have to do marketplaces separately, I think is very common for what we've seen. It's not always possible. And you talk, Steve, a lot around like, where does it fit in your channel strategy and trying to figure that out. My thought is that it will just all become, you know, it will eventually, most people will embed it within that same function, but maybe at the minute it's just too much to do that. And now we have the poll, which we've already had. We're going to do poll number 2.
Let's do it. So, increase in digital commerce talent costs, combined with everyone leaving San Francisco and moving somewhere else, has raised kind of the question of, all right, well, work from home, does that increase, decrease, normalize? Is it too soon to tell? Well, how does that impact your ability to hire? We see this quite a lot in London, a little bit less so in 2019, 2020, obviously, but up until then, of many brands, many retailers really struggling to find talent outside of London, and then inevitably having to put digital hubs, e-commerce hubs into London itself. And questions remain: is that going to continue, or is everyone going to be flocking to, you know, Cornwall or something to go set up by the beach and work remotely? And Andy, some of the preliminary results are in. Yes, they can actually hire digital talent more easily. Are you seeing that as part of the briefs that you're getting of companies that are saying London/remote or something like that?
Yeah, undoubtedly, not across the board, but certainly, we've got clients previously who we would have hired for who would have required someone to be at least within distance of the office for a few days or whatever that looks like, who are, you know, at the extreme end just saying we'll hire them anywhere. You know, some clients who've never hired people outside of the UK are saying that it doesn't matter, we can hire them in Europe. Time zone is clearly the only blocker. So yeah, undoubtedly that. And I think in some areas that doesn't matter so much, because if we think of like the FMCG industry in the UK, most of the talent is in the similar places anyway, right? London's, you know, Southeast is a big hub. There are other areas, you know, Manchester and others. But I think when that becomes really relevant, and this comes back a little bit to my point around the Moneyball stuff, where you can really find deep knowledge that your business probably doesn't have at the minute, or maybe hasn't had in the past, is often people who've sold their own stuff on marketplaces, right? That's a kind of pool of talent that is all of a sudden in huge demand, where 12 months ago wouldn't have been. So people who've built brands and have sold them to an aggregator, or people who've just kind of lived a bit of a nomadic, you know, lifestyle and had their own marketplace brands, actually often those are the people who have the greatest insight into how to do this. So I think being able to access those sorts of people, I mean, they're not necessarily easy to find, but with particular pockets of people like that, if you can hire remotely, it really helps.
It's an interesting question of, for this specific type of role, I'll call it like a junior to mid-level, marketplace manager type of role. Is the skill set closer to exactly what you were saying? The someone who's a digital nomad, has a lifestyle blog, and drop ships from AliExpress or something into Amazon. Is that a more relevant skill set for that, or someone who's a junior key account manager selling 1P on Amazon?
I would say the former, particularly early on as well. I think when you're building it out and you need someone, and we'll come on to this a bit with some of the responsibilities within specific job specs. But I think what you find early on is that, I'll maybe just skip to that slide now. I mean, this is for a head of, and then we've got one for a junior channel manager here. But if we look at it for a head of, I think, so one thing I thought was interesting here is you can select multiple options, and I wonder how many people selected pretty much did select multiple, because I think the big thing we find is, particularly if we don't really have anyone in a specific marketplace role, but we need to hire them, is we need someone who can cover everything, right? We need a complete kind of jack of all trades who understands the strategic side, but can also be, in the seller account making changes, who understands the supply chain elements, who even might understand, tax implications or finance implications. So the people who've run their own business doing it themselves are, proper entrepreneurs who have touched upon all of that stuff. And I think it's that knowledge that certainly, if we get people like that interviewing with our clients, they're often the ones that really kind of wow the clients, because the businesses are like, oh my God, we just didn't know, they're helping us understand stuff that we didn't even realize, because they've grown a brand from scratch to maybe only, turning over $1 million or something, but it's one person who's done all of that themselves. They've, from sourcing through to end. So yeah, I think early on it's that skill set, people who've built stuff from scratch, whether that's themselves or it's within another brand, that is the most relevant. And I think we're skipping around a bit here, but while we're on this, I think for this junior channel manager type role, even actually my thought here would be, there are a lot of if you look at the list of responsibilities, sales reporting and content compliance and campaign integration between marketing, distribution, and platform. It's kind of some of the basics, right? It's getting basics really nailed. And I think actually, if you're thinking about hiring for this sort of talent longer term, actually I would be saying, try and build the capabilities internally, try and have a succession plan and a development plan that actually can coach and teach this stuff and have a kind of best practice, because you're probably going to overpay if you just try and hire someone at this level externally. I think maybe at a more senior level, you might need that, someone who can be the strategic, the leader. But actually at this level, it again is around what are the core competencies and kind of skills we need and traits we need, not where have those traits come from. And if you go down the route of either we need to poach someone from a competitor who's done this, you'll have to pay over the odds, or we need to hire from an Amazon or from a marketplace, you're going to have to pay over the odds. So what I'd be thinking is, how do we actually build a bit of a pipeline internally at this more operational level of those skill sets? Because if you don't, you're going to be constantly, overpaying, I would say. We missed one, I think, here.
Yep.
Yeah, reporting lines. So Yeah, it'd be very interesting to see where this goes. I think over the last few years, generally, there's been a lot more kind of similarities and kind of consolidation, or like people gravitating towards the same ideas of how they structure these things. 3 or 4 years ago, it was, I think, a lot more spread out in terms of where responsibilities sat. So I don't think it's a surprise to say, right, we now have a dedicated e-commerce team. It's established, and it makes sense for this to fit into here. I think where I probably don't see it yet is in the conversations around centers of excellence, just because it's not enough on the agenda there. I think a lot of businesses have been expanding their CFEs in the last year, but more so on the core, the core routes to market from an e-commerce perspective, not so much marketplace. And here we go. Yeah, so this is a very interesting one in terms of, and I think maybe we might have some people who might chime in on this who are watching from the agency side. I mean, certainly, Amazon managed services agencies, consultancies have benefited hugely from this growth, because they have, they're ready to go, right? You can deploy experts in all of the specific areas you need experts to run your marketplace business straight away. So I think everyone I speak to, I'm pretty sure I would have some relationship with, an agency of some kind. It might only be we use someone to help us with chargebacks, or we're helping someone's helping us build a brand store, or it could be just that basic, but it could be actually everything. And yeah, it'll be, remains to be seen where this goes. Undoubtedly, brands who very quickly wanted to mobilize their marketplace team probably used agencies a lot, and are probably over time saying we're going to bring more of that capability in-house. So where those dynamics kind of balance out will be be interesting to see. So here's some of the specifics around that. Sorry, my screen has just disappeared briefly for a minute, so I can't see the slide. There we go. So again, it's kind of some of the stuff I was touching upon before. I think the brand protection one's interesting. I know you mentioned that a lot around it being really important. And again, I'll hop back to this actually for the senior channel lead, and this kind of ties in. It was very low down on the list. I wonder if actually that's not necessarily it won't become a priority. I just think people don't know enough about it. That's a bit of a case of we don't put it in the responsibilities for this role, because actually we probably don't know how much of a challenge it's going to be until we really get stuck into marketplaces. So that's interesting, and obviously it comes up here on this in terms of what capabilities you're going to outsource. And like media activation's an interesting one as well. I think we're seeing a big shift there. I think a lot of the bigger media agencies are offering Amazon, as a service, either in and of itself or as a bolt-on, but they're learning as they go as well, right? So there's definitely going to be an opportunity there for specialists to actually just purely focus on that, whether that's managed services or technology around, ad management and analytics and stuff like that. I think there's a few out there already doing very well, but I can see more and more specialists there. And I think the bigger agencies, media agencies, might are going to have to move quick to kind of keep up with that.
Yeah, I completely agree, and I think it's going to be interesting to see how, in this specific sector of agency support, you've got people who are incredible at just running search optimization. You got people who are fantastic at building up brand shops. You got PDP, A+, wizardry. You've got different elements of how brands need to be successful on Amazon, and some are full managed outsourced and they take a percentage of it and it's great, and some are a little bit more tactical. And what's interesting is the first one here for me of, well, they may be planning to outsource it. It's not going to be to their current agency. So there is potential room there for someone to really up their 3P marketplace creds to be able to kind of own that space and win a little bit more share.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. And I think what we've seen as well, the kind of extreme end of this is some of the businesses who are very marketplace focused. And again, if we talk about like the aggregators, obviously like pretty much all of their business is reliant on it. They're actually saying we're going to build as much of this capability as we can in-house. So actually, we're going to hire a CTO and a product team, and we're going to build, all of this. It's certainly from an analytics and reporting perspective. So I know it'd be interesting to see whether that becomes kind of more of a thing, or actually the outsourcing is still the kind of majority decision there.
Very interesting. Fantastic. All right. Thanks, Andy.
Cool.
Yeah, for those that are in the UK and itching to get out, we've got 1 or 2 more minutes, and then we'll set you free. So takeaways. Some of the things that we've seen, right, is the big one for me, kind of the aha moment, is all around growth. So growth is incredibly top of mind, and part of that is just pure necessity of, oh my gosh, I can't get my products in Q2 last year to anyone who actually wants to buy them, or anyone who still has a job. So I need to find a new route to market. I can't just be all in on Amazon 1P. I need to de-risk and diversify my route to market. And alongside of that is, if I'm going to diversify my route to market, the assortment I had may no longer be profitable or relevant or efficient in those new channels. So how does that work through growth? And then increasingly, it's how do I take back control? So much of that is I cannot rely on an Amazon to dictate my growth. And while I may be growing 25%, could I actually be growing 30%? Or could I be growing 30% with a little bit more control and ownership over my own destiny, rather than, worrying about chargebacks, deductions, and getting crapped out every day? So can I own more of that? So we're seeing quite a lot of movement towards owning more of the go-to-market strategy. And we're seeing brands learning from where they have invested in e-commerce capabilities over the last 5 to 10 years, and starting to ensure that the marketplace, fast fulfillment, new route to market elements of how they're going to grow is very closely linked to the core e-commerce channel team, rather than kept completely separate. And we're seeing quite a lot of partners being used to do things like rapid pack size experimentation, bundle packs, solution packs, multi-packs, bringing in items which may turn too slow to put into general distribution. But if you put enough of those more long tail SKUs into a 3PL and that has international coverage, all of a sudden the economics make more sense. So it allows for a unique look at different levers that you can pull on your legacy assortment to see what works and what doesn't work. Cool. Andy.
Yeah, so I think that it's pretty clear here, right, that it's going to be a key driver of growth in many areas. So that kind of understanding of what are the fundamentals of what we need to understand to make this work from a, as you mentioned here, like unit economics perspective, from an operational perspective, where are the opportunities in the marketplaces, and not just getting sucked into, I'm guilty of it, right? I'm always kind of refer back to Amazon as a kind of almost catch-all for all marketplaces, because in Europe, sometimes, it feels like that. But where are the other opportunities? You said like Mercado Libre as an example. If you're not thinking about it, it's a huge opportunity to steal a march on other people. And then, hiring is going to be crucial. And I would repeat what I kind of said earlier. I think for me, it's about breaking down the kind of functional like capabilities you need, not looking at job titles or where people have come from. And I think to build the best teams, that's going to be the people who do that are going to be the best. And if it's actually kind of saying, right, I'll be category and sector agnostic about where these people come from, but I will hire for people who do all this stuff really well. Yes, you need someone who understands marketplace dynamics in there to help them, but actually you can kind of have a lot of people who are great individual contributors in their area delivering on that. And I think if you can focus on that, that's how you're going to be able to build great teams, but also great value teams. Oh, looks like we might have lost Steve again right at the end. Yes, there's a cheat sheet here. I know for a few of people I've spoken to and kind of shared this with in advance, they found it super helpful. So yeah, we'll be sharing this out. I'm not going to go through all of these in detail now, but yeah, something that might be super useful if you're getting into marketplace kind of strategy right now, or in the weeds of it and need some kind of specifics around different areas. And yeah, that's it. Oh, I've got two of you now, Steve.
Can you hear me once or twice? Okay.
I can hear you once.
Yeah, it rained today in London, which means the power goes out, which is weird. That's my own problem. Are we done? Are we doing Q&A now? I missed it.
Yeah.
Okay.
No,
awesome.
We're just getting to it.
No, thanks for that. Sincere. I know it's it's a lot of content. It's a lot of slides. So we appreciate you sticking around with us. We hope that at some moment in time, some of these data points will be helpful in helping you build a case to be as awesome as you possibly can in your company. And next year, well, I guess the back half of this year, we'll be launching this again, so we can actually start seeing how things are evolving over time and start benchmarking. Fantastic. We will take questions. We've got 2 or 3 minutes left, and if not, no worries. Go off, enjoy, and you'll get an email link to all the content in the recording, so you can share it internally if you'd like to. Cool. If there's no questions in the chat, we'll say goodbye. All right. We'll say bye. Cool. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.
Nice one. Thanks, Steve. Thanks, everyone.